In the arid heart of Arizona, where the scorching sun cracks the parched earth and the wind incessantly carries the acrid scent of dust and dry hay, lives Luke Harris, a solitary 50-year-old rancher who has avoided all contact with town since the tragic death of his wife 5 years ago. His calloused hands and time-worn face reveal decades of hard labor under the relentless American desert sun. On a suffocatingly hot July morning, as he trudges heavily to the barn to check his equipment before taking the thirsty cattle to the distant pasture, Luke hears a muffled, strange sound coming from the dark depths of the aged wooden shed. Forcing open the heavy, creaking door, his blue eyes are met with a disturbing scene: a young woman with dark hair and torn clothes, tied with thick ropes, her wrists purple and swollen from the deep marks of the bindings that had cut into her delicate skin during hours of captivity. The young woman, who shyly introduces herself as Emily Carter through dry lips and a hoarse voice, can barely articulate coherent words due to the trauma she's experienced. Between dry coughs caused by accumulated dust and desperate glances of panic that constantly sweep the surrounding environment, she urgently whispers that it's not safe to stay there, her hands trembling uncontrollably as Luke carefully cuts the ropes that held her prisoner. Luke, who for many years has learned to deeply distrust any stranger who appears on his isolated land, must make a crucial decision: either take her immediately to the sheriff in the nearest town or risk discovering the mystery behind the situation on his own. On the dusty barn floor near where Emily was tied, a yellowed piece of paper, charred at the edges, displays blurred traces of an old map, but much of it has been deliberately burned, leaving only incomplete coordinates and indecipherable symbols that pique the seasoned rancher's curiosity. The burned map instantly stirs dusty memories of old stories told by older residents about legendary shipments of stolen gold said to have been hidden in the mountainous region during the turbulent times of the 19th century gold rush. However, the presence of that mysterious document also quickly attracts the dangerous attention of armed, hooded men who begin to silently prowl Luke's isolated property during the dark nights, leaving suspicious horse tracks and strange footprints around the fence that marks his land. With the suffocating summer heat of Arizona making every movement a torture, the well water becoming increasingly scarce due to the prolonged drought, and the psychological tension dangerously escalating with each passing hour, Luke finds himself completely cornered between protecting the mysterious young woman and preserving the safety of his own home, unsure of whom he can truly trust in this complex and potentially deadly situation that has invaded his peaceful life. On a stormy, foreboding afternoon, with dark, ominous clouds completely covering the distant horizon and the characteristic smell of impending rain permeating the dry desert air, 3 masked riders slowly approach the ranch on their black mounts, demanding in an authoritative and threatening tone what she brought as they point rusty rifles at the wooden house. Emily, trembling with fear and with tears streaming down her dirt-streaked face, finally reveals amidst desperate sobs that the fragmented map leads to a secret location where her father, a respected geologist, had hidden irrefutable documentary evidence against an organized group of land thieves who had terrorized local ranchers for decades. Luke's moral and practical dilemma becomes brutally real and urgent. Surrender the helpless girl to the bandits and thus save his own life and property, or bravely confront the armed and experienced strangers, risking losing absolutely everything he has worked for his entire existence, including his own life and the memory of his deceased wife. After a quick, violent and deafening shootout that echoes through the surrounding Rocky Mountains, leaving bullet marks on the barn walls and covering the ground with smoking shell casings, the masked men strategically retreat into the hills, shouting sinister threats and emphatically promising to return with reinforcements before the next sunset. Luke and Emily, physically and emotionally exhausted after the confrontation, with clothes soiled with dust and sweat, realize with increasing clarity that the incomplete and charred map represents their only realistic chance to definitively prove the truth about the crimes and prevent future threats against their lives and those of other innocents. At the first golden ray of dawn, which paints the sky in orange hues over the distant mountains, they set off together on horseback across the arid landscape, carefully carrying the fragile piece of burned paper wrapped in cloth and bearing a silent but powerful agreement to find the rest of the crucial clues before their relentless enemies catch up to them again. With a heavy but determined heart, Luke gazes at the infinite horizon of the American desert, where red rocks rise majestically against the crystal blue sky, reflecting on how his solitary routine life was completely transformed in a matter of hours by the unexpected arrival of that courageous young woman. The rancher, who for 5 long years had carefully avoided any kind of significant human bond, trying to protect his wounded heart from the overwhelming pain of new losses, now carries in his tired but resolute gaze the iron determination to protect someone again, whatever the cost. As they ride side by side through the wild vastness, with the warm wind drying the sweat on their faces and the horses' hooves kicking up small clouds of golden dust, both instinctively know that the dangerous journey that is beginning will lead them not only to the answers they seek, but also to a profound transformation of their own souls, forging between them an unbreakable bond born of shared adversity and mutual courage in the face of the imminent danger that awaits them. Following the fragmented clues of the burned map, Luke and Emily ride for hours through the relentless desert, where giant cacti stand like silent sentinels and the heat shimmers in the air, creating distant mirages. The young woman, still shaken by the traumatic events, gradually reveals crucial details about her father, Dr. James Carter, a geologist who discovered compromising documents about the criminal organization led by Marcus Serpent Rodriguez, a ruthless man known for eliminating anyone who threatened his illegal land appropriation business. As they stop to rest near a dry creek bed, Emily shows Luke a small golden key she had kept hidden in the pocket of her torn blouse, explaining that this key opens a safe buried at the location indicated by the map's coordinates. The warm wind carries the distant sound of hooves, indicating that their pursuers have not given up on the deadly hunt that awaits them in the decisive hours ahead. The sun begins to set on the horizon when they reach a rock formation known locally as Devil's Mesa, a red plateau that rises dramatically from the arid plain like a natural fortress sculpted by winds over millennia. Luke immediately recognizes the location from stories told by his grandfather about old bandit hideouts that operated in the region during the last century when law was scarce and justice depended on the speed of a revolver. Following the partial coordinates, they discover a hidden cave behind a cluster of rocks, where Emily uses her key to open a metal safe buried under layers of dirt and pebbles. Inside the metal container, they find detailed documents, compromising photographs, and financial records that expose decades of criminal activities, including murders, extortions, and the systematic theft of rural properties belonging to hard-working families who were brutally expelled from their ancestral lands. The discovery of the documents represents both a victory and a new danger, for now they possess enough evidence to destroy the criminal organization, but they have also become even more valuable targets for immediate elimination. As they carefully examine each paper under the golden light of dusk, they distinctly hear the sound of multiple horses rapidly approaching through the valley, accompanied by distant shouts and the crack of whips cutting through the dry air. Luke immediately realizes they have been surrounded by at least 8 armed men, a force far superior to what they previously faced at his ranch. With the documents securely stored in the leather satchel, he quickly assesses the limited options: try to escape through a steep trail he has known since childhood, but risk a fatal fall, or make a last stand in the cave, where they can temporarily defend themselves, but will inevitably be captured when their ammunition runs out, definitively sealing their fates. Marcus Rodriguez finally appears mounted on a black stallion, his eyes cold as steel, and a deep scar crossing his bearded face, the result of a previous confrontation with a courageous rancher who tried to resist his criminal organization. The bandit leader offers a chilling ultimatum: voluntarily surrender all the documents in exchange for a quick and painless death, or face the brutal consequences reserved for those who defy his absolute authority in the region. Emily, surprising everyone with her unexpected courage, firmly positions herself beside Luke and declares that she will never allow her father's memory to be stained by cowardice, even if it means paying the ultimate price. The tense air vibrates with electricity as men on both sides check their weapons and prepare for the decisive confrontation that will determine not only their personal destinies, but also the future of dozens of innocent families who depend on the exposure of these crimes to reclaim their stolen properties and restore justice. The final shootout explodes with deafening violence that echoes through the rocky walls of the mesa, with bullets ricocheting off the stones and sending up sparks that momentarily illuminate the growing darkness of dusk. Luke, using all his experience as a Vietnam War veteran, manages to eliminate 3 attackers with surgical precision, while Emily, demonstrating an iron determination that surprises even herself, loads ammunition and tends to the superficial wounds Luke suffers during the intense combat. When the smoke finally dissipates and deadly silence replaces the roar of guns, Marcus Rodriguez lies motionless on the stony ground, his criminal plans definitively ended by the justice of the desert. The documents remain intact, and the surviving bandits flee in panic through the night, knowing that without their merciless leader, the criminal organization will quickly disintegrate like sand in the wind, finally freeing the region from the terror that had plagued it for entire decades. 3 months later, under the crystal blue sky of a golden Arizona autumn, Luke Harris is no longer the lonely and bitter man who avoided all significant human contact. Emily Carter, now living in a carefully prepared room in the main ranch house, has brought new life to that property, which for years echoed only with the melancholic silence of solitude. The local court, based on the irrefutable evidence found in the safe, returned dozens of properties to their rightful families, and Luke discovered an unexpected calling helping other ranchers rebuild their lives devastated by the criminals. On quiet afternoons, when the day's work is done and the stars begin to shine in the immense desert sky, Luke and Emily sit on the wooden porch, sharing stories and plans for the future, both understanding that sometimes the most valuable maps lead not to buried treasures, but to authentic human connections that transform wounded hearts into homes filled with renewed hope. 6 months after the events that forever changed their lives, Luke Harris wakes before dawn in his transformed home, where the aroma of fresh coffee and homemade pancakes replaces the bitter silence that once dominated his solitary days. Emily, who shows a natural aptitude for caring for the property, has already fed the chickens and milked the dairy cow, her delicate hands now calloused from honest farm work. The young woman, who initially arrived as a traumatized victim, has blossomed under Luke's paternal care, developing impressive inner strength and a genuine smile that brightens even the most difficult days of the harsh desert winter. During breakfast shared at the solid oak table that belonged to Luke's late wife, they discuss plans to expand the herd and build a new fence in the east pasture, simple conversations that reveal the deep family connection that has naturally developed between the solitary rancher and the orphaned young woman. The local community, initially wary of outsiders and sudden changes, gradually embraces Luke and Emily as local heroes who freed the region from the criminal yoke that had oppressed it for decades. Reverend William Thompson, an elderly man with a white beard and kind eyes, regularly visits the ranch to offer spiritual guidance and becomes an important paternal figure in Emily's life, helping her process the traumatic loss of her biological father. Sarah Mitchell, the local school teacher, an intelligent woman in her 30s with red hair and a warm smile, offers private lessons to Emily, who had missed months of formal education due to the kidnapping and its aftermath. Slowly, Luke realizes that the glances exchanged with Sarah during weekly visits awaken feelings he believed buried forever with his late wife, creating a delicate emotional tension he doesn't yet know how to properly handle. During a cattle fair in the neighboring town of Sunset Ridge, Luke and Emily meet Tom Bradley, a young, recently graduated lawyer who moved to Arizona seeking to make a difference in rural communities neglected by urban justice. Tom, impressed by the courage both demonstrated during the confrontation with the criminals, offers his free legal services to help other victims of the dismantled organization recover their properties and obtain compensation for years of suffering. Emily, now 17 and showing remarkable maturity, expresses interest in studying law to continue her father's work in exposing corruption and protecting the innocent, an ambition that fills Luke with paternal pride and also an inevitable melancholy, knowing that she will eventually follow her own path. The festive atmosphere of the fair, with live country music and the tempting aroma of barbecues, offers a striking contrast to the dark memories of the recent past, symbolizing the human capacity to find joy even after traversing the darkest periods. A particularly severe winter storm isolates the ranch for an entire week, forcing Luke, Emily, and Sarah, who had become stranded during an educational visit, to live in intimate proximity in the house, warmed only by the crackling fireplace. During the long nights lit by candles and oil lamps, they share deep personal stories, play old card games, and discover surprising affinities that further strengthen the bonds uniting them. Emily, observing with the typical perceptiveness of youth, clearly notices the mutual attraction between Luke and Sarah, and discreetly decides to create opportunities for them to spend time alone, demonstrating impressive emotional wisdom for her age. Sarah, a widow who lost her husband in a mining accident 3 years prior, finds in Luke a kindred spirit who understands the pain of loss and the difficulty of rebuilding life after a devastating tragedy, creating between them a connection based not only on physical attraction, but on a deep and genuine emotional understanding. The following spring, as wildflowers transform the arid desert into a colorful tapestry of unexpected beauty, Luke finally finds the courage to confess his feelings to Sarah during a romantic sunset stroll among the rolling hills covered in yellow and red blossoms. Emily, now accepted into the University of Arizona with a full scholarship to study law, watches the budding romance with maternal approval, feeling fulfilled for having helped the man who saved her find happiness in love again. The ranch, which once echoed only with loneliness and painful memories, now resonates with frequent laughter, lively conversations, and the comforting sounds of a true family forming through chosen bonds rather than merely biological ones. Luke, contemplating his transformed life as he watches Emily study for her final exams at the kitchen table, and Sarah quietly hums as she prepares dinner, finally understands that sometimes the greatest treasures are not buried in the ground, but grow naturally in hearts open to the possibility of loving again. 2 years later, in a simple but moving ceremony held at the ranch itself under a starry Arizona sky, Luke Harris and Sarah Mitchell marry before family, friends, and neighbors who have become an extended family through shared trials. Emily, now a confident and determined university student, serves as maid of honor, wearing the light blue dress that belonged to Luke's first wife, an honor that symbolizes the continuity of love across generations and the human heart's capacity to expand rather than simply replace lost affections. Reverend Thompson conducts the ceremony with tears of joy in his eyes, blessing a union that represents not only the love between two individuals, but the healing of an entire community that learned to trust again after years of fear and oppression. As the newlyweds exchange handwritten vows under the soft light of lanterns hanging from the trees, all present understand that they are witnessing not just a wedding, but the celebration of the human capacity to transform suffering into hope, loneliness into family, and despair into a bright future built on solid foundations of genuine love, shared courage, and unwavering faith in the fundamental goodness that resides in the human heart when it finds purpose and true connection. 5 years after the wedding, the Harris Mitchell Ranch has become a symbol of hope and renewal for the entire region, attracting visitors from neighboring states who come to learn about the extraordinary story of transformation and courage that unfolded on those blessed lands. Luke, now with graying hair but eyes bright with contentment, has significantly expanded the ranch's operations with the dedicated help of Sarah, whose experience in school administration has proven invaluable in managing the growing business. Emily, having graduated from the University of Arizona with honors in law, returns regularly during holidays, bringing with her contagious energy and fascinating stories about her legal cases in Phoenix, where she works for a non-profit organization that defends the rights of small farmers against predatory corporations. The newlywed couple has also temporarily welcomed 3 orphaned children from the region, offering them a safe and loving home while they await permanent adoption, demonstrating how true love multiplies when generously shared with those most in need of care and protection. During a golden September morning, as Sarah teaches the fostered children to milk cows in the renovated barn, Luke receives an unexpected visit from Tom Bradley, now a respected lawyer and regular partner in legal matters related to local farmers' rights. Tom brings extraordinary news. Emily has been nominated to receive the Young Lawyer of the Year award from the state of Arizona due to her tireless work on land recovery cases and her exceptional dedication to social justice in rural communities. The news fills Luke with such intense paternal pride that his trembling hands can barely hold the official certificate Tom brought to show, while tears of joy stream down his sun-bronzed face. Sarah, running from the barn upon hearing the celebration, embraces her emotional husband as the children dance around them, not fully understanding the magnitude of the achievement, but instinctively feeling the contagious joy that fills the morning air with an almost palpable positive energy. The award ceremony in Phoenix represents a milestone not only for Emily, but for the entire extended family that has formed through shared adversities over the transformative years. Luke, uncomfortable in his dark suit but radiant with happiness, sits in the front row of the elegant auditorium beside Sarah, who wears a navy blue dress specially purchased for the occasion. When Emily walks onto the stage to receive her award, her professional and confident demeanor contrasts dramatically with the traumatized and bound young woman Luke found in the barn years earlier, symbolizing the incredible journey of personal growth and overcoming that they all embarked on together. During her acceptance speech, Emily dedicates the award to the courageous man who taught me that family is not defined by blood, but by the willingness to protect and love unconditionally. Words that make Luke hide his face in his hands as he openly weeps with emotion, regardless of the curious glances from other guests present at the solemn event. The return to the ranch after the ceremony marks the beginning of a new phase in the family's life, as Emily announces her decision to open a law office in the neighboring town of Sunset Ridge, allowing her to continue her work defending rural rights while remaining close to the family she considers her true home. Sarah, demonstrating her practical wisdom and entrepreneurial vision, suggests transforming part of the ranch into an educational center for urban youth to learn about country life and rural values, an idea that excites Luke with the opportunity to share his knowledge and experience with the next generation. The 3 fostered children, now fully integrated into the family routine, show genuine interest in participating in the educational project as young guides, revealing how the loving and stable environment allowed their unique personalities to flourish naturally. During the celebratory dinner prepared by Sarah with fresh ingredients from the organic garden they cultivate together, the family reflects on the extraordinary journey that brought them to this moment of peace and fulfillment, recognizing that each challenge overcome strengthened them as individuals and as a family unit. On a particularly significant autumn afternoon, 10 years after their first encounter in the barn, Luke and Emily visit Dr. James Carter's grave together in the local cemetery, where they place wildflowers gathered from the ranch and share memories of how his courage in documenting the crimes eventually led to justice and the positive transformation of many lives. Emily, now a respected lawyer in the region and engaged to Tom Bradley, thanks her biological father aloud for creating the circumstances that brought her to Luke, recognizing that even in the darkest situations, something beautiful and meaningful can emerge. Luke, resting his hand on the shoulder of the young woman he considers his heart's daughter, reflects on how life has mysterious ways of healing old wounds through new relationships and opportunities for personal growth. The gentle desert wind carries the scent of flowers and the distant sound of the church bell, creating an atmosphere of peace and gratitude that perfectly symbolizes the complete transformation of their lives, from an initial tragedy to a story of hope, familial love and renewed purpose that will continue to inspire others for future generations. As the sun majestically sets over the distant mountains, painting the Arizona sky with golden and purple hues that reflect the eternal beauty of the American landscape, Luke Harris contemplates his life with a deep sense of gratitude and fulfillment he never imagined possible during his years of loneliness and bitterness. The ranch, once a silent refuge from pain, now pulsates with life, children's laughter, lively conversations during family meals, and the comforting sound of people who genuinely love each other, building a future together. Sarah, pregnant with her first child at 40, represents not only the continuity of the family, but living proof that it is never too late to start over and find happiness when one keeps their heart open to possibilities. Emily, preparing for her own wedding and the beginning of a new family, carries with her the values of integrity, courage, and compassion that she learned during her formative years on the ranch. As he watches the stars begin to twinkle in the vast night sky, Luke finally understands that some burned maps, instead of revealing buried treasures, simply guide us home.